The war between the Valera Empire and the Human Alliance had lasted for months. The Valerans, proud and ancient, ruled hundreds of star systems. Their queen, Solara Valera, was known across the galaxy as the Vampire Queen, a being who could drain energy and life from others to stay strong. Her enemies feared her, and her people worshipped her as a goddess of darkness. But now the Queen's fleet had captured a small human ship near the border. The ship was badly damaged, its crew outnumbered. When the fighting stopped, only a few humans were taken alive. Among them was Captain Ethan Ward, commander of the vessel Aurora Dawn. He was brought to the Veleran capital, chained and silent. The alien guards around him looked at him as if he was a strange animal. They whispered about humans, how they came from a death world, how they were dangerous yet fragile, how their blood carried strange energy that even the Valerans could not fully understand. When Ethan was pushed before the throne, the vast hall fell silent. Queen Solara sat high above, her dark armor shining under the dim red lights. Her eyes were bright like twin suns, golden, sharp, and old. The air around her felt heavy, almost alive. Everyone in the hall knelt the moment she stood. Everyone, except the human. Ethan remained standing. The guards gasped and pointed their weapons at him. The queen raised her hand slightly and they froze in place. Her voice echoed, calm but cold. "Human," she said. "Do you not kneel before your conqueror?" Ethan's voice was quiet but steady. "I kneel to no conqueror, only to what I believe in." The hall filled with murmurs. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that and lived. Solara's expression didn't change, but something behind her eyes shifted. She stepped closer to him, her cloak whispering like smoke. "You are brave," she said softly. "Or foolish." Ethan met her gaze. Maybe both. A small smile appeared on her lips, the first her court had seen in centuries. "Interesting," she murmured. "Take him to my chamber. I wish to speak with him, alone." The guards hesitated but obeyed. Ethan was placed in a tall crystal cell inside the royal fortress. It was more beautiful than most prisons, clear walls, glowing lights, and the hum of alien machines. But he could feel the invisible barrier that kept him trapped. Hours later, the queen entered. She dismissed the guards with a simple wave. The door sealed behind her. "You surprise me, Captain," she said, walking slowly around him. "Humans usually beg, cry, or try to fight. You did none of those." Ethan shrugged slightly. "I've seen enough war to know that fear doesn't help." Solara stopped in front of him. Her eyes glowed faintly. "Your kind is strange. Your world breeds warriors and dreamers. You survive places that would kill others. Yet you are soft inside." Ethan looked at her carefully. "Maybe that's our strength. We feel things deeply, even in pain." The queen tilted her head. "Feeling is weakness." Ethan shook his head. "No, it's what makes us alive." For a long moment, neither spoke. The alien ruler stared at the human through the crystal barrier. In her heart, a heart that had been still for hundreds of years, something small stirred. When she finally turned to leave, she said quietly, "We will speak again." Days passed. Every evening, the queen returned to question the human. Sometimes she asked about Earth, its seas, its music, its strange blue skies. Sometimes she asked about war and how humans fought even when they had little chance to win. Ethan answered honestly. He spoke of cities shining at night, of people helping each other after disasters, of children laughing even during war. Solara listened silently, her golden eyes softening each time. In the grand hall, her ministers noticed the change. The queen, once cold and silent, now seemed distracted. Her orders grew less cruel. She began asking about the condition of the conquered worlds, something she had ignored before. Whispers spread quickly. "The queen is changing," they said, "because of the human." One night, a storm of energy shook the palace. An alarm rang through the halls. Ethan heard shouting, guards running, weapons charging. Before he could ask, the door of his cell opened and a soldier dragged him out. "Move, human," the guard barked. "Assassins in the palace." Before the guard could push him farther, a loud explosion tore through the corridor. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Ethan saw a shadowy figure aiming a weapon toward the main hall, where the queen was. He didn't think. He just ran. The assassin fired a glowing dart toward the throne room. Ethan jumped in front of it, tackling the attacker to the ground. The weapon fired again, striking the wall instead. Guards rushed in moments later, capturing the assassin. Solara appeared in the doorway, eyes blazing with energy. What happened? The guards bowed quickly. An assassin, my queen. The human, he stopped him. She looked down at Ethan, who was coughing from the smoke but still standing. You risked your life for me, she said softly. He gave a weak smile. I guess humans are foolish like that. The queen stepped closer. Her gaze was intense but not cold this time. You could have escaped in the confusion. I don't abandon people, he said simply. For the first time in centuries, the queen felt her heart beat faster. She reached out her hand and touched his shoulder lightly, a gesture no one had seen her do before. Guards, she said, her voice calm but powerful. Take him to the royal chambers. Make sure he is healed and given food. No harm is to come to him. The guards exchanged nervous glances but obeyed. As they led Ethan away, one whispered to another, The queen is protecting a human. This has never happened. That night, the queen sat alone in her private hall. The stars outside her window glowed red and gold. She thought of the human's words, sought about kindness, courage, and feeling alive. Her kind believed that emotions made them weak. But she remembered how Ethan stood before her without fear, how he risked his life without expecting reward. She whispered to herself, Humans, they are not what I was told. When she finally went to rest for the first time in centuries, she dreamed. In her dream, she saw a world of blue oceans, green forests and sunlight, a world she had never visited but somehow felt familiar. And standing under that bright sky was a human with a steady gaze and a calm smile. When she awoke, she felt something warm inside her, a feeling she hadn't known since her youth. The next day, when she entered the council chamber, her voice carried new strength. I have decided, she said. The human will remain under my protection. Anyone who dares question this will answer to me. The council bowed in silence, fear and confusion in their eyes. As Ethan looked out from his new quarters, guarded but free to move, he wondered what was happening. He didn't know why the queen protected him or why her eyes looked different now, less like a ruler's and more like someone searching for meaning. He only knew one thing. Something was changing in the empire. And in her heart. Ending line. In the great city of Valira under twin moons, a human prisoner and an alien queen had begun a story that would shake the galaxy forever. The next morning, the royal palace of Valira was filled with whispers. Servants moved carefully, afraid to speak too loudly. Soldiers stood tense at every corner. Everyone had heard the unbelievable news, and the vampire queen had saved a human prisoner and declared him under her protection. In all of history, such a thing had never happened. Some called it madness. Others said it was a curse. But one thing was certain. The queen had changed. Captain Ethan Ward sat quietly in his new chamber. It was not a prison cell anymore, but a small guest room decorated with silver patterns and glowing walls. The food was strange but rich in taste. He had even been given clean clothes, black fabric woven with energy threads that shimmered under light. He looked out through the transparent window. The capital city stretched far below, full of floating towers and silver bridges glowing under twin moons. Alien ships moved like silent birds in the sky. He could not believe that only days ago he was a prisoner waiting for judgment. As he watched, the door opened silently. Queen Solara entered, her long cloak flowing like dark fire. 2 guards followed her but stopped at the door when she lifted her hand. She wanted to speak with Ethan alone. You look better, she said softly. I feel better, he replied. Your healers are good at what they do. They are the best in the Empire, she said, walking closer. You saved me, Captain. I have not forgotten. Ethan smiled a little. Anyone would have done the same. Her eyes glowed faintly golden. No, she said. Most would have run. For a moment, silence filled the room. The queen studied him as if trying to read his thoughts. Ethan stood calmly, unsure what to say next. Finally, she spoke again. Tell me more about your world. About humans, he nodded. We're not perfect, he said. We argue, we fight, but we also build and care. We love deeply, even when it hurts. That's who we are, Solara frowned slightly. Love is a strange thing to me. It is not something my kind values. We rule by power, not by emotion. Maybe that's why your people fear you, Ethan said quietly. Her eyes widened a little. No one had ever dared speak so directly to her. Yet she didn't punish him. She only whispered, You are bold, human. Maybe I just speak what others are too afraid to say, Ethan replied. A faint smile touched her lips. And that is why I find you interesting. Later that day, the Queen called a meeting with her council. Dozens of alien nobles filled the golden chamber. Their eyes followed her as she entered, her steps firm, her face calm. Reports from the border, said one noble. Our fleets are preparing for another strike against the human colonies. Solara raised her hand. No. Halt all attacks. The room fell silent. My queen, another counselor said carefully. Surely you cannot mean to stop the war. The humans are alive, she interrupted. They are not our slaves. They are not our food. They are people like us. The nobles exchanged shocked looks. One of them, an elder named Lord Varn, stood up. Your Majesty, this human prisoner has clouded your judgment. You risk the safety of the Empire for... He stopped when Solara's golden eyes flared. Her voice became cold. Finish your sentence carefully, Lord Varn. The old noble trembled slightly. Forgive me, my queen, I meant no disrespect. Solara turned away, but her heart was heavy. She knew the council did not trust her anymore. She knew whispers of rebellion had begun. Still, she could not ignore what she had seen in Ethan. Courage, honesty, and something more powerful than fear. That night, Ethan was walking in the palace garden. The strange flowers glowed with pale blue light and the air smelled like rain. He enjoyed the quiet, though he knew he was watched by guards. He didn't notice the shadow moving behind him until it was too late. A knife flashed, a silent attack. Ethan turned just in time. The blade cut his shoulder, but he caught the attacker's arm and fought back with quick human reflexes. The assassin hissed. A Veleran noble dressed in black armor. Your kind has no place here, human. The assassin growled. Before Ethan could answer, the Queen's guards appeared, surrounding them. Solara herself arrived seconds later, her cloak swirling. Her eyes burned bright with fury. Who dares spill blood in my garden? She demanded. The assassin knelt. My queen, I only wish to protect you from his influence. He poisons your heart. Solara's expression darkened. My heart is mine to protect. She raised her hand and a wave of golden energy wrapped around the assassin, freezing him in place. You tried to harm one under my protection. You know the law. The guards carried the attacker away. Ethan watched silently, his shoulder bleeding. Solara looked at him and frowned. You are hurt. It's nothing, he said, pressing his hand against the wound. She stepped closer, placing her palm near his skin. A faint golden light glowed from her hand. The pain faded instantly. Ethan blinked. You can heal people? Not often, she said softly. Only those whose energy matches mine. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, something neither could name. In the following days, the Queen kept calling Ethan to her chamber. They spoke for hours, about Earth, about history, about the stars. Ethan taught her human sayings and stories, while she shared the long, tragic history of her empire. She told him that she had ruled for almost 500 years. In all that time, she had never aged, never loved, and never trusted anyone fully. You live a long time, Ethan said quietly. But it must be lonely. Her voice trembled slightly. It is. Immortality feels like a cage when there is no one to share it with. He looked at her with understanding. Maybe you don't need to rule alone anymore. Solara felt her chest tighten. No one had ever spoken to her that way, not as a queen, but as a person. That night she could not sleep. His words echoed in her mind. You don't need to rule alone. The next morning, the council held another secret meeting, and without the queen. Lord Varn slammed his fist on the table. The queen has lost her sense. A human sits in her palace like a guest. We must act before she destroys everything we built. A younger noble asked, What will we do? We will remind her who truly rules the empire, Varn said darkly. And if she refuses to listen, then we will replace her. Meanwhile, Solara stood on her balcony watching the sunrise over the city. Ethan joined her quietly. It's beautiful, he said. Yes, she replied. I have seen thousands of sunrises, but this one feels different, he smiled. Maybe because you're not watching it alone. For a moment, she said nothing. The morning light reflected in her eyes. Then she whispered, Ethan, tell me honestly. Do you trust me? He looked at her carefully. Yes, I think you're trying to change. And that's not easy for anyone, and even a queen. Her voice softened. If my people turn against me because of you, would you still stand by my side? He didn't hesitate. Yes. Solara closed her eyes for a moment. She felt something new inside her, a connection she could not explain, a warmth that scared her but also gave her strength. You are strange, human, she said quietly. You make me feel alive again. Ethan chuckled. Then I'm doing something right. That evening, as darkness covered the city, the Queen stood before the royal mirror, a great crystal that reflected not only one's image but also their true emotions. For the first time, Solara saw herself not as a ruler or a monster, but as a woman, tired, lonely, and now uncertain. Behind her reflection, she saw Ethan walking through the palace halls. And somehow she felt her reflection smile. But far below, in the hidden chambers of the capital, the rebellion was beginning to move. Nobles gathered in shadows, whispering of betrayal and blood. They planned to strike soon, and their first target was the human who had changed their queen. Above them all, unaware of the coming danger, the Queen whispered to the night sky, Perhaps humanity's light can reach even me. Ending line. In the cold empire of Valera, the bond between a human and the vampire queen had begun to grow. But in the shadows, enemies were already preparing to destroy it. The capital of the Valera Empire glittered under its twin moons, yet the light could not hide the growing tension in the air. Rumors spread through every corridor of the royal palace. The vampire queen, once feared and untouchable, was said to be spending more and more time with the human prisoner, the man who had saved her life. Servants whispered behind doors. Guards traded nervous looks. The nobles, proud and cold, watched with silent fury. Queen Solara knew all of this, but she didn't care. For the first time in centuries, her heart was no longer silent. Something had changed, something she couldn't explain. Mourning in the throne hall, Solara sat upon her high throne, surrounded by ministers and lords. Her expression was calm, but her golden eyes burned with quiet strength. Report, she said. A general stepped forward, armor shining. Your Majesty, our fleets are ready to attack the human colonies near the rim. We await your command. The Queen's gaze hardened. You will not attack. The general froze. But my queen, the humans are not our enemies, she interrupted firmly. Not anymore. The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. Not our enemies? Has she lost her mind? What of our honor? Solara stood, her cloak flowing like night itself. I have seen what endless war brings, and ashes and pain. No more. There will be peace. Lord Varn, the oldest council member, spoke with trembling anger. And this change, my queen. Did it come before or after you met the human? All eyes turned toward her. For a moment, the hall was silent. Then Solara spoke in a voice that cut through the air. It came after I remembered what compassion feels like. After the meeting, the Queen walked alone through the palace garden. The air was cool, filled with the faint hum of glowing plants. She found Ethan standing by the fountain watching the alien sky. He smiled when he saw her. You look tired, she gave a faint laugh. Ruling a galaxy is not easy work. Especially when your council wants to overthrow you, he said gently. She turned to him, surprised. You know about that? I can see it in their faces, he said. They're afraid of change, Solara sighed softly. They think I am weak. They think you are controlling me. Am I? He asked quietly. Her eyes met his. No. You remind me that I still have a soul. For a long moment they stood there in silence, the alien wind moving through the glowing trees. That evening, the Queen left the palace without guards for the first time in years. She walked among her people hidden beneath a simple cloak. Ethan followed, keeping close but respectful. They saw the slums, poor areas she had not visited in centuries. Children played near broken machines. Families struggled to light their homes. Solara stopped, staring in shock. How could I not see this? She whispered. Because no one wanted you to, Ethan said. But now you're here. The Queen knelt beside a small girl who looked at her with wide violet eyes. The child was weak and pale. Solara touched her hand, sending a gentle pulse of energy. The girl's color returned and she smiled faintly. Ethan watched quietly as the Queen stood, her expression heavy. These people are my responsibility, she said. Not just the nobles, he nodded. That's what real leaders do. That night, she ordered supplies and medical care to be sent to the lower districts. Her ministers were confused, but they obeyed. The story spread across the capital. The vampire queen healed a child with her own hand. For the first time in history, her people began to see her not just as a ruler, but as a protector. But not everyone was pleased. In the shadows beneath the city, Lord Varn and his loyalists gathered once more. "She has lost her way," Varn growled. "The human has poisoned her thoughts. The empire will fall if we let this continue." Another noble nodded. "Then what do we do?" "We remind her of her place," Varn said coldly. "And we start by removing the human." The next day, the queen visited the training hall. Veleran warriors were sparring with energy blades. Ethan stood near the edge, watching curiously. Solara approached him. "Have you ever used one of these?" she asked, handing him a practice blade. Ethan smiled slightly. "I've held worse." They began to spar, slowly at first, then faster. The guards watched with wide eyes as the human matched the queen's movements. Her attacks were elegant and precise, but his reflexes were sharp and unpredictable. Finally, their blades crossed. For a brief moment, they were face to face, breath mingling, eyes locked. "You learn quickly," Solara said. "Good teacher," Ethan replied with a grin. She lowered her blade, smiling faintly. "You are infuriating. And you," he said, "are impossible to predict." For the first time in years, laughter filled the training hall. Her laughter. That evening, during dinner, the queen invited Ethan to join her at the royal table. The nobles looked uncomfortable, but she ignored them. Lord Varn whispered loudly to the others. A human sitting beside the queen. Unthinkable. Solara heard him and set her goblet down gently. "Lord Varn," she said, "I remember you once said loyalty means serving your ruler's will without question. Has that changed?" The old noble bowed stiffly. "Of course not, my queen." "Good," she said with a small smile. "Then you will not question mine." The table fell silent. Ethan tried to hide his smile, but the queen noticed. For a moment she felt warmth spread through her chest, something rare and new. Later that night, Ethan was walking back to his chamber when the lights suddenly flickered. The hallway went dark. He felt movement behind him. A shadow leapt from the ceiling. He turned, blocking the strike with a fallen guard's weapon. The assassin hissed. Another noble soldier dressed in stealth armor. Ethan fought fiercely, but the alien was faster. Just as the assassin raised his blade, a golden blast filled the hall. Solara appeared, her eyes blazing. The assassin froze mid-motion, trapped by her power. "Enough," she commanded. She turned to Ethan. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "Just another close call." Her anger burned brighter. "This ends now." She walked into the grand hall, still in her royal gown, and summoned every noble to gather. When the chamber filled, she stood at the center, her energy flaring like sunlight. "You whisper behind my back," she said. "You send assassins in the night. You plot rebellion because I show mercy. You call me weak." Her voice grew sharper. "But strength without compassion is hollow. Power without honor is corruption. I will not rule through fear anymore." Lord Varn stepped forward, shaking with rage. "You risk everything for a single human." Solara's eyes glowed gold. "That single human reminded me what it means to live." Gasps echoed through the hall. "You dare protect him?" Varn shouted. The queen's voice turned to steel. "Touch him, and you touch me." The hall fell completely silent. Even Varn lowered his eyes, defeated. Ethan, standing near the entrance, felt his chest tighten. He had never meant to cause such trouble, yet hearing her words filled him with pride and something deeper he couldn't name. Later, in the quiet of her chamber, Solara stood by the window. Ethan entered softly. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "Now they'll hate me even more." She turned to him, her expression gentle. "They already did. But I don't care. You showed me a better way." He hesitated. "You've changed more than I thought possible." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps it is you who changed me." For a moment they stood close, looking out over the glowing city. The silence between them was peaceful. Finally, the queen whispered, "Ethan, tell me, do humans believe in fate?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes. But I think we make our own." She looked at him, her golden eyes softening. "Then maybe fate brought you here for a reason." Outside, the stars shimmered above the alien sky. Inside, the vampire queen felt her ancient heart beating again, slow, steady and alive, ending line. In a galaxy ruled by power, Compassion had returned, carried by a single human and the queen who dared to listen to her heart. The great moon of Varkon rose higher that night, spreading its silver light over the dark palace. Shadows danced along the walls as if the night itself was alive. Inside the grand hall, the tension was thick. The alien nobles whispered among themselves, their glowing eyes darting toward the tall human standing beside the throne. Ethan stood there, wearing the ceremonial armor gifted by Queen Seraphina herself. The armor shimmered faintly, crafted from lunar steel, a rare metal used only for royal protectors. He felt the weight of 1,000 gazes, every stare filled with judgment, disbelief, and anger. Queen Seraphina, sitting on her high throne of crystal and bone, looked calm. But her calmness was a mask. Inside, she was burning with worry. She had just declared before the entire council that Ethan, a human from Earth, was her life partner. A union between species had never been done before among her kind, the proud vampire-like rulers of the Shadow Worlds. The hall fell silent as Lord Varian, one of the elder council members, stepped forward. His pale face was marked with red veins, his long cloak dragging behind him like mist. "Your Majesty," he began in a cold voice, "the council demands an explanation. How can the Queen of the Shadows bind herself to a human, a creature of flesh and short life?" Seraphina rose slowly, her eyes glowing like rubies in the dim light. "Because he saved our world," she replied firmly. "When the sunstorm burned through the sky, it was he who guided the shields. When the rebel fleet surrounded our borders, it was he who stood with me. He earned this place." Murmurs spread through the chamber, but Varian's expression hardened. "You speak of bravery, Majesty, but the council speaks of blood. You are the last pure-blooded heir of the Varkon dynasty. Your union with a human will end our lineage." Ethan clenched his fists but stayed silent. He understood the meaning behind the words. These people believed in blood purity, in power that flowed through their ancient veins. To them he was an outsider, a fragile being from a blue planet far away. Seraphina's voice became sharper. "My lineage is strong enough to face any storm, and my choice is my own." But as she spoke, she could feel the unrest growing. She had known this moment would come. Her council had always been divided, some loyal to her, others loyal to the traditions that chained their kind to the past. Ethan stepped forward at last. His voice was steady but filled with quiet fire. "You think I'm not worthy because I'm human. But I didn't come here to take her power or her throne. I came because I care for her. I came because she showed me what honor means." Varian's eyes narrowed. Care, honor, human words, empty words. Before Seraphina could respond, the doors to the hall burst open. A group of armored guards rushed in. Their leader, Captain Drek, knelt before the queen, his face pale with fear. "Your Majesty, the outer shield has failed. The rebels are inside the capital." Gasps filled the air. The council members rose to their feet, panic spreading like wildfire. Seraphina's crimson eyes widened, then hardened. "How many?" she asked sharply. "Thousands, my queen. They've breached the eastern wall," and a sudden explosion shook the palace, cutting off his words. The hall lights flickered and dust rained from the ceiling. Seraphina turned to Ethan. "We must reach the command tower, now." Varian shouted, "This is your fault, human. You brought ruin upon us." Ethan ignored him. He ran beside Seraphina as the guards formed a protective ring around them. Outside the throne hall, chaos filled the corridors, servants fleeing, alarms ringing, and plasma fires glowing in the distance. The rebels had timed their attack perfectly, just after Seraphina's announcement. Someone from the council must have betrayed her. As they ran through the winding hallways, Seraphina spoke quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "They won't stop, Ethan. The rebels see me as weak now, unfit to rule because I chose you." "Then we'll prove them wrong," Ethan said, gripping his blaster rifle tightly. "We'll make them see the truth." They reached the command tower where screens showed the burning city. Rebel ships swarmed the sky like angry insects. The royal guards were fighting back, but the situation was desperate. Seraphina touched a glowing panel, activating the defense grid. "I can lock down the inner gates, but it will take time." "I'll hold them off," Ethan said, moving toward the blast doors. Seraphina looked at him sharply. "No, you can't fight them alone." He smiled faintly. "I'm not alone." He tapped the side of his helmet, activating his communication link. "This is Ethan to Earth Fleet Command. Send the Raven Squadron. Coordinates uploaded. Far above the atmosphere, hidden in orbit, 3 human stealth ships received the signal. Their engines flared silently as they descended. Within minutes, the night sky exploded with streaks of blue fire as the human ships entered the fight. Plasma cannons roared, cutting through rebel formations. The alien guards in the command tower stared in disbelief. "Human warships?" one whispered. Ethan turned to Serafina. "I couldn't come here without backup. I knew this day would come." Her eyes widened with shock, then softened with understanding. "You risked everything for me." Before he could answer, another explosion shook the tower. The blast doors began to melt as rebels used heavy plasma cutters. Ethan aimed his rifle. "Looks like they're not done yet." Serafina stood beside him, her long coat flowing like a dark flame. "Then let them come," she said quietly. "Tonight the Queen fights beside her partner." The doors burst open and a flood of armored rebels stormed in. Ethan fired first, his shots clean and precise. Serafina raised her hand, releasing waves of red energy that sent the attackers crashing into the walls. The battle was fierce and fast. Smoke filled the air. Sparks danced across the floor. But neither Ethan nor Serafina gave ground. They fought side by side, human courage and alien power working as one. When the last rebel fell, the tower stood silent again. Only the sound of distant explosions filled the air outside. Serafina turned to Ethan, breathing hard. Her pale face was lit by the flickering red lights. "You saved us again." Ethan smiled wearily. "We saved us." For the first time that night, she allowed herself to smile. But deep inside, she knew this was not the end. The attack was only part of a larger storm, one that would test both her throne and her heart. Outside, the human warships continued to battle above the burning city. The future of 2 worlds now hung on what would happen next, and as the night deepened, the alien vampire queen looked at the man beside her and whispered softly, "No matter what they say, you are my life partner." The stars above seemed to listen, glowing brighter over the war-torn planet. The morning sun rose over the Valira Empire in soft, pale light. After the battle of the previous night, the city lay in ruins, yet hope lingered in the hearts of its people. For the first time in centuries, the vampire queen Serafina walked among her citizens without fear. The humans who had arrived with Captain Ethan Ward were helping rebuild, their skills and courage inspiring the Valirans. The royal palace, once filled with whispers of betrayal and rebellion, now hummed with preparation. A great ceremony was being held in the central hall, not for war, but for a declaration that would be remembered across the galaxy. Ethan stood beside the queen, wearing simple attire for the ceremony. He had fought beside her, healed beside her, and risked his life countless times. Now he was not a prisoner. He was no longer an outsider. He was her equal, her partner, and her anchor. The council members filed into the grand chamber. Some looked wary, some still bitter, but all were curious. Outside, the citizens had gathered in the streets, their eyes turning toward the palace, waiting for news of their ruler and the human who had changed her heart. Serafina walked onto the platform first, her black cloak flowing like liquid night. Her golden eyes scanned the crowd with calm authority. When she gestured, Ethan stepped forward to stand beside her. For a moment, the hall was silent. No one dared speak. The energy in the room was heavy with expectation. Finally, Serafina raised her voice, clear and strong. "For centuries, this empire has known fear. My people have obeyed my will, and many have whispered of my power. But power without compassion is hollow. Strength without loyalty is meaningless." She paused, letting her words sink in. The nobles shifted uneasily. Some tried to hide their surprise, but all understood the weight of her voice. "Some of you have questioned my choices," she continued, "especially regarding the human who stands beside me. You have called him weak. You have said he does not belong. And yet," her gaze fell on Ethan. For a moment, the hall seemed to vanish, leaving only the 2 of them surrounded by glowing eyes. "He has shown courage beyond measure. He has risked his life for this empire, for my people, and for me. And he has done so not for power, but for loyalty, honor, and love." The room went silent again. Even the oldest nobles found themselves holding their breath. Ethan stepped forward slightly. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I did what any human would do. But I did it because I believe in her, and because I believe in what this empire can become." Serafina's hand found his. For the first time in public, she did not hide her affection. She squeezed it gently, a signal to the galaxy that he was no longer just a human visitor. Then, in a voice that echoed through the entire chamber, she said the words that would change history. "He's my life partner." Gasps erupted from the nobles. Some turned pale, some muttered under their breath, and some could not believe what they had just heard. A human standing beside the queen recognized as her life partner. It was unprecedented. Serafina's eyes swept over the crowd. "You may not understand it. You may resist it. But know this, he stands for the values that will guide this empire forward. Courage, honesty, and loyalty. We will build our future together." Ethan looked at her, his heart pounding. He could see the determination in her eyes, the strength that had always inspired fear, now tempered with compassion. He squeezed her hand in return. Outside, the citizens erupted in cheers. Humans and Velerans alike raised their voices. The streets were filled with music, drums, and the sound of life returning to a city that had known only fear for centuries. After the ceremony, Serafina and Ethan walked through the palace halls. The nobles, still unsure, bowed as they passed. Some avoided their gaze, others whispered apologies for doubting them, but even in that tension, a new respect had begun to grow. "Do you think they will ever accept it?" Ethan asked quietly. Serafina looked at him, golden eyes soft. "Some may resist forever, but those who survive will see that courage and compassion are stronger than tradition, and our example will guide them." Ethan smiled faintly. "I never thought I'd hear a vampire queen talk like that." She laughed softly, the sound like wind through silver trees. "And I never thought I'd find someone who makes me want to change." Weeks passed. The empire slowly healed. The lower districts were rebuilt with help from both humans and Valerans. Schools reopened. Markets thrived. Soldiers who had fought in the rebellion returned home with new respect for the human warrior who had fought beside their queen. Serafina and Ethan spent time learning from each other. She taught him the history of her people, their strategies, and their ways of ruling. He taught her about Earth, about human customs, and the meaning of small gestures that showed trust and care. Their bond deepened, not just as rulers and protector, but as partners in life. One night, as they walked across the palace balcony, looking over the city glowing under the twin moons, Ethan spoke softly. "I never imagined a world like this." Serafina's hand found his. "Neither did I, and yet here we are," Ethan smiled. "Do you ever regret it?" "Choosing me?" Serafina shook her head. "Never. You reminded me that life is more than power, that it is about connection, about love." He looked at her, and for a moment the distance between alien and human vanished. Two hearts, different in origin, beat in unison under the same stars. A year later, the Empire celebrated a new festival, not of conquest but of unity. Humans and Velerans danced together in the city squares. Music filled the air. Children ran through the streets, their laughter echoing against the towers. At the center of it all, the queen and her human partner stood on the grand stage. Serafina raised her hand, calling for silence. The crowd fell quiet. "My people," she said, "this empire has known fear for centuries. Today we celebrate not just survival but trust, courage, and loyalty. And I celebrate someone who has shown me the true meaning of all three." Ethan stepped forward. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I never wanted power, but I wanted to protect this empire. And I wanted to protect her." Serafina looked at him, golden eyes glowing with pride and love. "And together we will continue to protect it. Together, we will show the galaxy that a human and a Veleran can lead with honor, courage, and compassion." Then, with a voice that echoed across the entire city and beyond, she said again, louder than before, "He's my life partner." The crowd erupted in cheers. The citizens, soldiers, and even nobles who had doubted them shouted their approval. Flags waved, and the twin moons reflected off the palace walls, casting silver light on the happiest night the Valira Empire had ever known. Ethan smiled at Serafina. "We did it," he said softly. "We did," she replied, her hand still in his. "And this is only the beginning." Months passed, and the alliance between humans and Velerans grew stronger. Trade between planets increased. Rebels who survived were offered peace and roles in rebuilding. The Empire flourished in a way no one had thought possible. And through it all, the Queen and her human partner were side by side, not just as rulers but as equals, bound by courage, trust, and love. The galaxy watched, some in awe, some in disbelief. The legend spread quickly. A human had changed a vampire queen's heart, and together they had led an empire to a new age. Ethan often looked up at the stars with Serafina at his side. "Do you think anyone will ever believe it?" he asked. "Perhaps," she said, smiling. "But it doesn't matter if they believe. We know the truth, and we will live it every day." As they held hands and looked out over their empire, the twin moons reflected light onto their faces. The galaxy would remember the day when courage, compassion, and love changed the heart of a queen and the destiny of an empire. Ending line. And so, under the twin moons of Valera, a human and an alien queen stood together, not just as rulers, but as life partners, their bond shining brighter than any star, promising a future where courage and love would guide the galaxy forever.